Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be talking about what it means to actually carry as a support and how you can use these principles to gain a lot of elo in Season 10. So, as of the making of this video, I am a Diamond 3 support in the preseason of Season 9, or going into Season 10. Season 10 starts in 3 days. So, right now I'm Diamond 3. We'll see where I get in Season 10. But I just wanted to share some of this information and just try to help you become a better player, think about the game a little bit more critically, and improve that elo and get to the rank that you want to get to. So I think a lot of this stuff doesn't get explained very well, especially at sort of an approachable level for a lot of players. So a lot of challengers and high-level players are going to know these things, but I think it just doesn't get articulated that well, particularly on some of the popular sites out there. So I'm going to try to help enlighten you a little bit, give you some stuff to think about moving into the new season. So if you enjoyed this guide, please be sure to like and subscribe. It does help out a ton on the channel. We also stream every night starting around 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We usually go till about 2 or 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that stream is on YouTube. And we have a lot of other content just like this as well. I'm going to have released a new one-trick guide for Season 10 by the time this comes out. I released a new like 80 carry guide. Then we have all kinds of topical guides as well. So how to micro better, how to macro better, how to manage waves, how to think about dodges, how to think about champion select. And then we have individual champion guides too for a wide array of supports. And we have a coaching session playlist as well, with over 200 sessions in there that you can always access for free, so you can flip through and see some analysis of some of your favorite champions. And finally, I also do a fresh tier list and patch notes assessment for every single patch, where I try to give you the most in-depth information possible to help you understand what some of the changes are and how you can use them to your advantage. So be sure to check out all the rest of that content if you like this. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. And I am going to have timestamps in the description, so if this video is a little bit longer than you'd like, you can always kind of jump around to your favorite parts and learn what you want to learn, or watch like 15 minutes at a time over the course of a few different days. And this Google Doc will also be in the description if you just want the super TLDR version. You can access that. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. Now, when most people say carry, I think they have a very limited perspective on what carrying actually means. So the base level, first level that people think of when they talk about carry in any position, in any role, is a heavy damage dealer that's going to get a lot of kills. Okay, and that is true to an extent, and that's the easiest thing to understand, right? You do a lot of damage, you get a lot of kills, you get gold, you have items, you win the game, right? That's kind of the most basic understanding of it. But it does get a lot more complicated than that, right? Because sometimes we see some champions that have really high win rates, like Janna and Soraka, that do almost no damage as the game goes on. And yet, historically, especially Janna, she's had a really high win rate for many, many, many years. I'd say she's the highest win rate support of all time for low diamond and lower. So how does she do that? Why is she so dominant even though she doesn't deal any damage? And on the flip side, we've seen many games ourselves, I'm sure, where you notice somebody that has a ton of kills, that has a lot of gold, but they just don't quite win the game. That might be you, in fact, right? Maybe you're in silver right now and you do a lot of damage as Brandon Zyra, you know, in a lot of games, but then you just don't really find yourself climbing that much. So the old adage where it's the win lane, win game, deal a ton of damage to hard carry your bad teammates doesn't really hold up if you look at it over a lot of games. It goes a lot deeper than that. That's one way that you can potentially carry, but there are lots of others as well. And so it's important to understand what these other ways are. And so I think the next level of thinking that I wish more people would get to is that true carrying means you're generating an outsized advantage for your team. You're improving the probability of your team winning the game more so than anyone else on your team. So you're taking some of their weaker play and you are using your stronger play to compensate for that. And that's really what carrying is. So you got to remember, you're going to have teammates. If you deserve to be in a higher elo bracket, you should be better than everyone else in your game, right? If you're in silver right now and you think you deserve gold, you should be playing better than all of the silver people. So that means that everyone is going to look like they're a lot weaker than you if you're playing at a gold level. That's how it should be, right? If they were just as good as you were, if your teammates were just as good as you are in silver, then everyone's just going to stay in silver. You're not playing better than they are, so you're not going to rise. But if you're playing better, everyone else is going to look worse, or they're actually going to perform worse, and you have to carry them. Okay, so a lot of times people think, oh, well, carrying means you do a lot of damage, but your teammates can't be bad. If your teammates are bad, you can't win. It's like, well, if your teammates are just as good as you wouldn't need to carry them, right? And that means that you wouldn't climb. So carrying means you have to win with teammates that are underperforming. That's just how it is. If you want to climb, you have to play better than everybody. Therefore, everyone's going to be worse than you. Okay? So you got to keep that in mind. So it can be frustrating when you have that top laner that goes 0-5 or the mid laner that goes, 0-8. And some games are going to be unwinnable. But over the course of a longer period of time, you're going to have to learn how to win with these teammates if you want to climb. Okay. So how do you do this? What is this all about? So I want people to start thinking about 3 key resources that help you win games of League of Legends. And that's gold, which is the most obvious one, information, a little bit less obvious, and time, perhaps even less obvious than that. But we're going to talk about how you can use all of these resources to ultimately help you win games. And so I'm going to explain each one of these. I'm going to give you some examples for how to use that, how to maximize that in your own gameplay. I'll show you some examples when it involves macro on the map over here. And then at the very end, I'll give you the 5 qualities of strong carry supports. And hopefully that'll give you some ideas for champions that you might want to play. Okay. So usually the team that manages these 3 resources, they're going to win most of the games. Okay, so let's start with the easiest one here, gold management. Okay, so the easiest thing to think about here, kind of that level 1 thinking, is you get kills and assists. That gives you a lot of gold, and you do that by dealing a lot of damage. Okay, so this would be like your Zyra and your Brand support. And if you get, 5 kills in lane as Brand or Zyra, that's certainly going to help. That's going to bring you on your way. And the way that it does that is it gives you a lot of gold, right? You get 450 gold roughly on a kill. You get the kill plus the assist that goes to your teammate, or maybe the assist gold goes to you. That allows you to buy items and just be sort of objectively stronger than the enemy team in a fair fight. Okay, so dealing damage is one. Another way that you can manage gold really well is through good crowd control, because that allows you to buy time and it allows you to mitigate damage, right? So anytime that you crowd control somebody with something like Nautilus, they're not dealing damage while they're stunned, and that allows your AD carry to not only deal damage, but to reposition and to end up in a favorable spot for the fight, right? So it's going to allow them to run away if they're getting chased, or it's going to allow them to chase people down if the enemy's trying to escape. So CC, crowd control, is very powerful for this. And another thing is healing and shielding, and we'll talk about that more here in just a second. But healing and shielding is also a way to carry, because you're buying your allies more time. They're going to be able to put out more damage. They're going to have more cooldowns. They're going to be able to reposition better before they die. So you're denying damage from the enemy. So think of that as almost like anti-damage is the shield, right? So if damage is really strong for generating gold, then healing and shielding is also really strong because it's preventing the enemy from getting kills on your team. Okay. And being able to get kills also gives you other additional resources through time management, which we'll talk about here in a second. But whenever you get a kill, that gives you a numbers advantage so that you can get tower plates, get scuttles, dragons, get deeper vision, make better rotations, get preferable back timings. All of these management systems sort of fit into each other over time. And for example, also, if you get really good information management, that's going to allow you to get better kills and assists, which is going to give you more gold for gold management. So all of these are kind of intertwined together. But that's one thing we'll talk about with the time advantage here in a little bit. But you just want to make sure that anytime you get a kill that you're getting something other than just the kill. You don't just want to recall right after you get the kill. You want to be thinking, can I get the deeper vision? Can I get the scuttle? Can I get the dragon? What can I do with this time advantage that I have now after I get the kill? And we'll talk about, like I said, some more options here in a little bit once we get into the time management a bit more. But you also want to be able to use gold efficiently. So getting extra gold is nice, but also being able to use gold efficiently is also nice. It's trying to think about what is true wealth a lot of times in the real world, right? So part of it is making a lot of money, but we've all heard of cases, right, of these celebrities that end up with like $50 million and they spend all of it very inefficiently, and then all of a sudden they're broke. So that you could have someone who's making $100,000 actually end up being wealthier than a millionaire if they manage their money better, right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of it's going to come down to how you're spending your money. So this is where itemization matters, and different sorts of abilities matter too, depending on the champions. But we're not going to go into that as much here. But you want to think of efficiency with gold. So, okay, if you have a limited amount of gold, how can you make it count? And this is really important for support as well, because this is why a lot of people think that supports can't carry, is that they don't earn a lot of gold, right? Because you're not killing minions. And a lot of times with a lot of supports, you're not going to be getting a lot of the kills. So how can you win the game if you don't have the gold? Well, a lot of it comes down to efficiency. And support items in particular, especially enchanter support items, are going to be the most efficient items in the game in a lot of instances. So for instance, if we look at Ardent Censer here, then they have different stat valuations, and this is just the League Wiki site if people want to come in and look at that. But every single item is going to have a baseline gold value, and the main reason for that is they'll just look at a base item like Fairy Charm. They'll say, okay, this costs 125. It's giving you 25% base mana regen. So each point of mana regen, therefore, derives or is worth 5 gold. Because it has 25. It's the lowest gold item that has that on it. It costs 125 to buy, so that's the value of 1 point of mana regen. So it's like that for every single stat in the game. But if we go through and look at Ardent Censer, and it sort of walks through some of the different scenarios here, it ends up in a lot of cases where you're buffing one ally, sort of in the mid game, it's going to be about 200% efficient. And if you buff multiple allies, it can go up to 400% efficiency on that item. Now, what does that mean? What does efficiency turn out to be? Well, if it's 200% efficient, that means you're paying 2,300 gold, and you're getting 4,600 gold worth of value for your team, right? So that's the same thing as getting 5 kills. Because 5 kills, like we talked about before, about 450 gold. Multiply by 5, you get about 2,250 in terms of gold. Right here, you're generating a 2,300 gold advantage. So it's worth about 5 kills in gold. So if you buy something like Ardent Censer, then you're giving your team an additional 5 kills worth of gold. So it's like pentakill whenever you buy Ardent Censer. That's effectively what happens. You don't get the cool animation on the screen. You know, a lot of people aren't going to think about that, but that's basically what it is when you buy an item that's that efficient, right? Versus something like Twin Shadows. Here, if you look at the gold efficiency on this item, it's 86%. So what does that mean? That means that you're basically losing 1 kill worth of gold. So it's minus 350 gold. Now that doesn't include the slow that you get off of this, and it is kind of hard to quantify exactly what that slow is. If you're getting a kill off of that item and there's no way you would have otherwise had the kill, then, you know, it can be even more efficient, but it's difficult to quantify. But just looking at that in general, you can kind of see the difference here, right? Where you know, you're getting 5 kills worth of efficiency off of Ardent Censer, and you're losing a kill's worth of gold. So if you itemize incorrectly, or you buy something like a Twin Shadows when you could use an Ardent Censer, then that's really going to hurt your team quite a bit. So in order for Twin Shadows to make up for Ardent Censer, it would have to generate 6 kills worth of gold. And so you'd have to get 6 kills with that passive there, off of the Twin Shadows in order to make up for the efficiency that it loses. And that's assuming that the Ardent Censer isn't forcing any kills either with all the extra stats that it gets. So you're working uphill big time if you're trying to buy something like Twin Shadows instead of Ardent Censer. And sort of on that note as well, just thinking about how healing and shielding works, and this starts to explain why Janna's really strong, if you think about it, is that healing and shielding is the most efficient stat in the game by itself. It's the most efficient thing you can do. And the reason is that it works with resistances rather than against resistances. So it's like going with the river, with like the flow of the river, versus trying to swim upstream, right? It's just going to be much, much more efficient, and you're just going to be able to move a lot faster, right? When you're going with the stream of the river rather than trying to go against the stream. So how does this work? Why is it like that? Well, if you put a 100 shield on somebody and they have 100 armor, then that armor affects the shield, okay? So that means it's going to take 200 physical damage to break that shield. Because if you didn't know, how armor works is every 1 armor that somebody has means that the enemy has to do 1% additional physical damage to offset that armor. So if someone has 50 armor, it's going to take 50% more physical damage to kill them. So if they have 100 health and 50 armor, it's going to take 150 physical damage to kill them. Okay, it's the easiest way to think about how armor works. Magic resist is the exact same thing. In terms of 1 point of magic resist means that someone has to do an additional 1% of magic damage to kill them. So when someone has 100 shield, they put a 100 shield on someone that has 100 armor, then it's going to take 200 total physical damage to break that shield. Right? Versus if someone were trying to do 100 physical damage against someone with 100 armor, it's only actually going to do 50 damage. Okay? Because the 100 armor is going to reduce the damage by 50%. So this is why in past videos I've said that healing and shielding is going to be 4 times as effective as damage dealing. And you know, some people have contested me, well, that's not exactly accurate and blah, 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 blah. That's fine. If you don't want to believe that exactly, just think of it this way. Exactly like I said, you put a 100 shield on somebody with the same amount of armor, it's going to take 200 to break it. You try to do 100 damage to someone with the same amount of armor, it's only going to do 50 damage. So that's why healing and shielding is so strong, is because it works with resistances. And it has special stats that buff it up too. It has the stat plus healing and shielding. Most of the plus healing and shielding champs also have AP ratios, and there are also certain runes like Revitalize that are going to give you a lot of extra benefit out of that. And there are other items like Spirit Visage that give additional healing and shielding to people that are wearing them. So there are a lot of special things in the game that scale exponentially well with plus healing and shielding. Just imagine, you know, if there was an item that gave like 30% extra damage in addition to all of this other stuff like Spirit Visage does with plus healing and shielding. Or if there was a stat that someone could itemize into that was very cheap and very efficient that gave an extra 40% damage to somebody over time. You'd be like, oh my god, that's so OP. You know, there's a 2100 gold item that has a Quicksilver Sash on it that also like increases your damage by 20%. That'd just be nutty, right? But that's how it is with plus healing and shielding. There is a Mikhail's Crucible, there is a Spirit Visage, there is Revitalize. And so you have all of these things that start stacking up multiplicatively that just give you huge shields. Because if somebody like, let's just say that someone like Janna ends up, has like a 200 base shield just for easy math. She's shielding somebody that has 100 armor, and she has an additional 20% plus healing and shielding. Then she's going to get, you're going to start with a 2, and then she's going to have AP on top of that. Let's say that she has 100 AP, and that she's getting a 50% bonus to APs plus healing and shielding. So these are all like not exactly 100% accurate about Janna. Just to give you an example of how that scales, you check the AP first. So you'd say, okay, she has 100 AP, the 0.5 ratio on the shield. So that's going to give her 250 shield now. And then she's going to get an extra 20% off of that because she has 20% plus healing and shielding. So 20% of 250 is 50. So now she's going to have a 300 shield. And then she's shielding somebody that has 100 armor. So now all of that is going to get multiplied. It's going to take 100% extra damage to break that shield. So now she effectively has given them 600 points of mitigation. So all of a sudden that shield that started off looking kind of minor, it's just like a 200 shield, with all of these factors going in with the AP, the plus healing and shielding, and how it works with resistances, now all of a sudden it's a 600 shield. Effectively. So that's why there are just all of these different things that stack multiplicatively with plus healing and shielding. And I talk about this more in the guides and in the tier list that I release every patch. So if you want more details about that, go look at those. I don't want to spend too long going into it, but that's the basic gist of it. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. You know, they'll see someone like Janna and they'll just be like, what does she do? She's not doing anything. When in fact, she's giving out a ton of gold effectively to her team because she's so efficient with her shields. And because the items that she gets are also super gold efficient. If you look at things like Ardent Censer, like Athene's Unholy Grail, and Redemption, those items are extremely gold efficient with what they offer for your time. So she doesn't carry by getting a ton of kills a lot of times. She does get a lot of assists, but the little gold that she does get goes a very, very long way because she's super, super efficient, right? I mean, she's like that person, you know, that maybe makes $100,000 that invests in some really savvy investments and ends up really making like 500,000 gold a year versus, you know, maybe a damage dealer that's like a millionaire, makes $1 million every year, and is very inefficient with how their items work. We'll talk about that in just a second. But maybe they only actually take home $250,000 a year because they're inefficient. So that's how it works, is she doesn't get a lot of money from kills, but she invests it. She's very efficient with it, and she ends up generating a huge, huge advantage for her team. Plus healing and shielding is so powerful in the game, in fact, that there are multiple things that specifically try to counter it, right? With Grievous Wounds. There are several champions with Grievous Wounds. There is Executioner's Calling. There's Morellonomicon. There's Thornmail. And they've created all of these items because plus healing and shielding is OP. Like, it's extremely powerful because of the reasons I just described mathematically and just how efficient it is, that they had to develop specific items to counter it because it's too strong. But even if someone has that minus 40% plus healing and shielding, it can still be very effective. And keep in mind that Grievous Wounds does not affect shields. So if someone has the minus 40% healing on Grievous Wounds, and they're trying to work with a Janna or something else that shields a lot, it's not going to work on them. Now, they have been trying to develop other champions that counter shields out there, right? So they gave Blitzcrank, his ultimate breaks all shields. I know they were messing around with Irelia breaking shields. I don't remember if they took that off or not. But they have created several champions over time that have favorable interactions with shields in the last couple of years, just because the plus healing and shielding is so strong. And another thing, just kind of hitting on this note as well, while we're talking about itemization that I just mentioned, is the itemization on AP supports is not really like that great. And that's why you don't see a lot of them other than Brand and Zyra, because Brand and Zyra have really strong baseline damage. But if we look at things like Morellonomicon, for example, right? So we were just talking about Ardent Censer usually has about 200% efficiency. Athene's Unholy Grail is usually about 200%. Redemption, depending on how well you use it and how many teammates you hit with it, can be up to like 300%. That's usually close to 150 to 200%. So in the worst case scenarios with the enchanter items, usually you're getting 150 is like the bare minimum most of the time efficiency, and a lot of them can go up to 250 or 300% gold efficiency. But the AP items don't do that. So Morellonomicon, only 92% efficient. You do get Grievous Wounds. Grievous Wounds is worth about 300 gold. If you think about Executioners, you can buy it for 300 gold off of it. So Morellonomicon is going to be about 100% efficient overall. Nowhere near the 150 to 250% efficiency, right? And if we look at things like Leandri's Torment, this is a little bit harder to calculate because the Torment portion of it, it depends on how much maximum HP somebody's going to have, and the Madness version of it, you know, that kind of depends as well. But it's only 78% efficient by itself. I think when I did the math on this item, I think it was like last year when I was doing math on AP items, it's pretty efficient compared to a lot of AP items out there. I think it ends up being about maybe 140 or 150% efficient against most targets. But nevertheless, these items are going to be less efficient than enchanters, and they're more expensive to buy to begin with. And because you're not making a lot of money, you're not the millionaire as support, then it's going to take you a long time to be able to afford this. Versus with things like Ardent Censer and Redemption and things like that, you can buy those a lot easier. They're usually between 2,100 and 2,300 gold. So you can get online, you can get that tempo, you can get that time advantage over AP supports, which we'll talk about more, the time advantage here in a second. That just allows them to get going into the game and to snowball harder. So that's why, unless the champion is if it's an AP support, if it doesn't have extremely high base damages like Zyra with her plants or Brand with his passive, then it's going to be a hard time for them to succeed. And that's why you don't see things like Orianna or Anivia or some of these other champs that have like potentially some interesting supportive qualities. They just don't have the base damage to offset for the fact that you're going to be poor and it's going to be hard for you to buy a lot of these items. Okay, and you might be wondering, well, why are enchanters? Why do they get all these cool toys? Why are they so mega efficient? And the biggest reason for that is you don't see enchanters in other roles, and if you do, a lot of times they get nerfed hard. So things like Karma Top, Lulu Middle from a few years ago, Ivern. There are only a handful of champions that use the plus healing and shielding items, and Riot just nerfs those out. So that's basically what it comes down to, is they can afford to put a ton of efficiency and a ton of power on those items because only supports use them. and they're appropriate for a support economy. Versus if they made an AP item that was that efficient, if they made an AP item that cost 2,300 gold and could be used by mid laners or top laners, it would end up being really, really OP because people could buy that item really early and get a tempo advantage over their lane. You're seeing that a little bit right now with Diana and Ardent Censer in the mid lane because they changed Ardent Censer a few patches ago to where if you shield yourself, you get the buff off of it. So Diana is abusing that right now, and in the past, people have abused some of these items. You saw things like top lane Karma, mid lane or jungle Ivern and things like that use Ardent Censer in the past. But I suspect that aspect of it will be nerfed. They'll probably make it to where you have to shield an ally again to make it work. But that's why they can't give nice things to AP champions or to AD champions like Senna and Pyke. They can't give them a lot of really efficient damage-dealing items because other lanes will abuse that. Other lanes will be able to cheat the curve and get a tempo advantage. Other than enchanters, because enchanters are strictly relegated to the support role, so they can push the power level on their items a lot more because other lanes won't abuse it. Okay, so the final thing that I'll mention here in terms of gold efficiency is that items stack multiplicatively. You want to play around your strong allies. So you'd much rather have, one hard carry champion with 4 items on them than 2 champions with only 2 items. And, the main thing is as champions get stronger and stronger, they get more gold, they get more powerful. So if it's like an AD dealing champion, AD stacks multiplicatively with crit. So if someone gets a lot of crit and they have a lot of AD, the crit is more effective and the AD is more effective because they both build on each other. You're getting bigger crits and you're having a larger percentage chance to get those crits. And then all of that also scales with any kind of armor penetration that they have. So if they have things like lethality, it's going to work with that. It also scales with attack speed. Sadie, stop running circles around. If they have attack speed, it's going to scale with that. So all of those things start working with each other. And then as the champion levels up, gains more abilities, starts hitting harder, they're going to be able to kill people more, they're going to get even more gold, and then they're going to be able to take over the game. So League is really a game about tempo and about putting as much power as you can concentrated in champions that scale really well with that gold that can use it as efficiently as possible. So for example, a real life example of this might be if you have a mid laner who is a Diana, for example. Maybe she's got 3 kills going on in the mid lane. She's already got a couple of items. And then you have your AD carry down in the bot lane who's 0-3, Ezreal, or something that's really far behind. You should be trying to itemize and think about putting your resources in that Diana because she's much more likely to carry the game because she's really far ahead with her gold. So that means that you should ideally be using your wards around there to try to protect her, so try to get some deeper wards around here. We'll talk about that more at the information game here in a second. But you want to try to get wards around her. You want to try to be using your resources on her. So if you get a tempo advantage by pushing in, you would want to try to rotate up there and see if you can make a play around that Diana, get her even more kills. In team fights, if you have a shield or a heal or something like that, you need to be looking to protect that Diana because she's going to be doing the majority of your damage. Rather than, if it comes down to it, if you have to use your heal to save the Ezreal or you have to use your heal to save the Diana in a fight, in this scenario, you need to be saving the Diana because she's a lot more valuable at that point of the game. If it were the flip side, if the Diana was 0-3 and bot lane you had a 3-0 Ezreal, you would want to do that differently, right? You would want to be using your vision around bot lane and you would want to be gathering items and managing team fights in such a way that you're going to protect the Ezreal and maximize his strengths. Another example of this might be if you have a top lane Darius, who's like 5-0. He just won his lane, and he's looking at team fight. He's coming down. Y'all are about to fight for Dragon. You have 2,100 gold in the bank, or let's just say 2,300. You have 2,300 gold in the bank. Your bot lane's playing Vayne, but Vayne's 0-3. Should you buy Ardent Censer or should you buy Shirelia's if you're playing Janna in that instance? A lot of times you should probably buy Shirelia's because that's going to help the Darius. You're itemizing for the Darius, right? You're going to allow him to get that extra movement speed to help him get into the team fight and really make a difference there, right? Versus your 0-3 Ezreal or 0-3 Vayne, I think I said, is not really going to be doing a lot of these fights, so you don't need Ardent Censer for her because she's really far behind. So that's just a small example of trying to play around whoever's strong on your team, whether it's your itemization, whether it's your positioning, your vision, whatever you're doing, you want to play around the strong people to make them stronger rather than trying to compensate for the weak people. Another example might be if you're trying to roam, let's say that you're a Nautilus, you just bought your Moby boots, maybe top lane is just crying all the time. They're like, please help me out, I'm getting destroyed. You know, they're 0-5 up there in the top lane, and you have a choice. You know, maybe you just broke bottom lane and you're trying to choose where you want to go. So you could go top lane to help out your 0-5 Darius, or you could try to roam middle and help out your 5-0 Akali, right? You want to help out the Akali, right? It's much better to play around the strong person rather than to try to save the drowning person. You ultimately end up helping the 0-5 person more by helping your strong person so that the strong person can carry the 0-5 person later on in team fights, right? Rather than wasting time. Because if you go top, a lot of bad things can happen, right? This person might be able to 1v2 you depending on who they're playing because they're going to be so much stronger. And if their jungler shows up and you end up in a 2v2 situation, you're probably going to lose because you're really far behind on that gold, right? So in addition to just the item stacking, it's just a lot safer. Because if you go and gank the middle lane and the jungler shows up, you're probably going to win that 2v2 if your mid laner's up 5 kills because they're just going to have a lot more power. So in general, play around your strong people, itemize for your strong people, give wards to them, just do everything that you can to help them get even stronger, as long as they are a champion that can scale well. Now, if it's a toss-up, if you have like a 3-0 Scion and maybe you have like a 2-0 Akali mid lane, you should probably still play around the Akali because she's going to stack a lot better with items and with gold than the Scion does. And part of that's going to be you just understanding who has the potential to take over games, to use that gold efficiency, to make plays, to carry. And Scion can operate a lot better without gold as much because a lot of his power is going to be in his CC, not necessarily in his itemization. Okay, so that's it for gold management. So just a quick recap. Just make sure that you're using, like, getting gold is good, but make sure that you're using it efficiently with your itemization. And then make sure that you are allocating your resources, allocating your gold to your strongest players that have the highest potential to take over the game, right? Okay, so let's talk about information management. So we've mentioned this a couple of times, but really what this is just you being able to interpret the information in the game and helping your team to make better decisions so that they can gain even more advantages in the game. So part of that, and that information's not free. It comes at a price, right? And so you're going to have to use wards and use vision to get better information so that you can play the game at an optimal level. So wards are some of the strongest item in the game because they give you the best information, right? Because you don't have to be there. You can leave something to watch the area for you while you go do something else, is kind of the gist of wards. So you want to be able to maximize the information of these wards. Now, part of this is going to come down to understanding where the jungler is, what the limits of your champion are, and what's safe to do. But in general, if at all possible, in an ideal world, you want to try to, especially in the early game, ward the camps. So if you have an option to like ward here, here, and here, if you're on blue side, those are perfect places to ward because the enemy jungler is going to have to path through there, right? So they're going to have to walk through there, and you're going to be able to see them. And whenever you see them, you get that information, and you'll know that you should be playing safer in the bot lane. So that can influence how you should be approaching the lane in different situations. You know the jungler's bot, you need to be safer. On the flip side, your top laner is also going to know the jungle's bot if you're giving that information so they can play stronger. So if they're playing something that is a really lane-dominant champion, and they could force a fight here, then now they're going to know they're safe to do that. So if it's something like Garen versus Darius, a really swingy matchup in the top lane, and your Darius thinks he can beat the Garen, if the jungler is not there, then he's going to know he can go in there and get that kill. Right? Versus if you had wards up here, for example, and you saw the jungler on this side of the map, then they would have to know they're going to be careful, or that they need to be careful. So you need to try to be able to ward those camps and ward major points of interest. So those types of wards, if you can get them, and you're not always going to be able to get them, but if you can get those wards, they're better. There might only be times where you can get like this ward and this ward, and that's okay, but that's not seeing the camps, right? So it's going to let you know if they're actively trying to come in and gank you, but you're not going to know where they are, right? So, for example, your top laner might be looking to fight, but if they don't know where the jungler is, if the jungler is over here doing wolves, but you don't have that information, the top laner may not be able to make that play. They're going to have to play safely because they don't know where the jungler is. Versus if you had that ward just a little bit further, if you could have gotten it here, then you would have had that information, right? Or maybe your jungler is an invading jungler and they're trying to look and find the enemy jungler so they can get some kills. Maybe the enemy is a Master Yi or something like that, just trying to power farm, and your jungler is a Lee Sin. If you get that information right there, then they're going to be able to spot him out and maybe come over here and make a play on him, right? Versus if you never get that information and Lee Sin can't find Master Yi, and Master Yi just gets to, just walk freely through his jungle and just ward everything and just power up for the first 15 minutes, he's probably going to take over the game. So as a support, you might be thinking, oh man, there's nothing I can do. This Master Yi just got really fed at 20 minutes and he took over the game. I couldn't do anything. It's like, well, yeah, you could. Earlier on in the game, you could have warded better and your jungler could have gone in and shut him down, or maybe even you could have gone in to shut him down. So that's just a little piece of advice. So sometimes you may not be able to do it. If you're playing something that is really vulnerable, if you're playing like a Soraka or something, and you don't know where the jungler is, you may not be able to get in here and get those deep wards, right? You might have to settle for the shallow wards. But if you can get them deeper, then that's going to be a lot better because it's going to give you better information. So you should be looking all the time to see if you can get this information and make it better. And one of the best ways to do that is to get priority in the lane. We'll talk about priority a little bit more with time management here in just a minute. But if you do get priority in the lane, if you're able to push them in, then that's going to allow you to rotate over here and get this better vision. So if you put them in their tower, they're not going to be able to rotate as easily if they spot you out while you're warding, and your AD carry can go with you. So then even if you see your jungler, the enemy jungler right there, if you show up with two people and they're pinned in that tower, you might still be able to just muscle your way in here and get this ward down anyways. Versus if you just tried to go by yourself and you didn't have priority in the lane. So let's say that the minion wave's right here. Your AD carry has to stand here and try to get these minions, and you try to go up here to get this deep ward. Their jungler's right there. Then their AD carry and their support might be able to rotate behind you and pick you off, and then you die while you try to get those wards. So a lot of good vision all starts with getting priority in the lane so that you can have a better opportunity to place those wards in a safer way. So you do want to get those wards. Another thing is a lot of people won't take advantage of the tempo that they have. So let me show you another example here. And this is something I've been doing recently that I found has been helping out a ton with my success. So if you're able to push in after you get your ward item upgraded, if you're able to push in right here, or the enemy, let's say that you force them out, say you poke them out of lane, and they take it back here, instead of just sitting here trying to get this tower plate, which is what I used to do all the time, to sit with the AD carry, try to get this plate. And sometimes that might be the right thing to do, depending on your support. But if you're playing something like Rakan, which can be very safe, if you get that priority here, then instead of sitting here and getting one tower, you can walk up here, place a green ward here, maybe place a pink ward here, and then go and place another green ward here. That's ultimately going to be a much better use of your resources rather than splitting the tower plate gold with your AD carry. So it's not always safe to do that, but if the enemy has backed, that is an option that I think a lot of people don't really look for, is that you can go in and get that information priority with the tempo that you have in the lane, rather than just settling for 60 gold off of a tower split. So that's just one more way that you can get that. And sweeping out enemy wards is really important too. Just putting down those control wards, using your sweeper, trying to clear out those wards as much as you can. Especially in places that are really common. So like the tri-bush is almost always going to be warded. And then a lot of times, something in this circle here is going to be warded. So if you use your sweeper, you'll find something in this circle, typically in the river, that you can use. And just, You also want to ping all the information that you can get. So part of really good information management is going to be putting down those wards, but then it's what you do with those wards, right? So ping it. You see the enemy jungler, ping them. Let your teammates know that that's where the jungler is. They may not be watching that. Your top laner might be involved in an intense fight, and they may not notice that that the enemy jungler is down here at Raptors. So just go ahead and ping it for them. Help them see that information. Help them understand other things that are going on. So jungler location, but also key timings. So flash is the most obvious one. You want to be pinging flash so that your team knows who doesn't have flash. But you can also ping like ult cooldowns. You can ping ignite, any of the other summoners that you see. Just really anything that's pingable, that's information, you need to be pinging it and communicating it with your team. You can also ping timers on dragons. That's really important. If dragon's coming up, usually about 1 minute, I'll put a ping out, and then 30 seconds, I'll put another ping out. So just ping it several times. Let your team know that some of these major objectives are coming up soon so that they'll be ready to potentially contest that. And you need to be putting up vision when that's coming up too. So it's not enough to show up on time for dragon. So like right when dragon spawns and put up vision, you need to be doing that earlier. So it usually takes about 30 seconds depending on your champion and their mobility to move from the fountain over to dragon. So you need to be backing at least with 45 seconds before dragon, and preferably a minute if you can, depending on your back timings, your gold amount, and stuff like that. Ideally, you're backing early so that you can get fresh wards and come up here and set up for this dragon. So if you show up early, right? If you back early and you show up with your team here, then you can set up the vision, right? This is sort of your dragon defense vision that you can put down here, right? All of that down, sweep the pit, and then pink the middle of the river so that you can get any wards they might push over these walls. And if you get there early with your team, then you can hide out in this spot right here. And then when the enemy support maybe tries to come down late and get this vision, then you can engage on them and get that kill, right? You engage everyone, get the kill, then you can force a 45 and get the dragon. So you want to make sure you're sharing that information, you're backing, and you're putting up vision so that you have full control over the area. Sometimes just having vision of an area can be just as important or maybe even more important than the objective itself, especially when it comes to Baron. If you have all the wards around Baron, you have full control, and they face check, you might be able to get an ace plus a Baron, and then that'll allow you to go in, grab 2 towers and an inhibitor instead of just getting the Baron. So getting that information early is huge. So make sure they're getting there early, putting down the information, and using that information to get a pick is really, really important. Another thing you can be pinging with information management are item completions. So just let your team know when someone's completing a major item. So if the enemy Vayne just completed her Blade of the Ruined King and your Jhin is still on his BF Sword plus Kerchise Shard or whatever, working towards Stormrazor, you want to be very careful fighting them because they're going to be up a key item. So just let your team know that. Or if, the mid lane Echo just completed a death cap or something like that, or a really important one is Quicksilver Sash. If you see that someone has a Quicksilver Sash, you need to ping it so that your team understands that that's on the table, right? So that way your Skarner doesn't try to ult their mid laner when they have a Quicksilver Sash, because it would be a waste. Now, should Skarner be looking for that by himself? Yes, he should, right? You shouldn't have to do that. But once again, if you're the person carrying, if you're the person who deserves to be a higher elo, this is one way that you carry, through information management, right? Because you're not getting a lot of gold right there. Like, you're not getting 10 kills in a game by pinging that Quicksilver Sash, but you might win the game off of that, because now the Skarner maybe doesn't waste his ult at a Baron fight. Maybe he doesn't waste it flash ulting the Echo who has a Quicksilver Sash. Maybe now he can flash ult the Kai'Sa who does not have Quicksilver Sash, and that might be the difference in the game. So some of these things don't look like they're a big deal, but they really, really can be a big deal. Another important item to ping is a stopwatch or an hourglass. If someone gets one of those, you really want your team to have that information, because if the Zed wastes their ult on someone who just bought a stopwatch, or if you waste your ult as a Nautilus on someone who just bought a stopwatch, that could determine the outcome of the team fight. So just make sure that you're always looking at items, pinging key completions, just letting your team know whichever information you want them to know. Or maybe your opponent is ahead in gold. Maybe they've got 3 or 4 kills, but they're building some really goofy item, and they're not as powerful as people might think, right? So maybe it's something like Echo mid lane decided to rush Nashor's Tooth, or something like that, instead of getting something like an hourglass or a proto belt or some other big item. You can go ahead and ping that for your team and just let them know, hey, this guy has a weird item. He's not as strong as we think he should be because he's not itemizing efficiently, so maybe it is safe to fight him after all. So just make sure that you're communicating that information as much as possible. And then a final one is rotation. So ping, obviously, MIAs if your support's MIA, but don't just ping your lane, ping where they might be, right? So if you're not sure where the support is, but you highly suspect that they might be rotating middle, then just go ahead and ping that and let people know. So instead of just question marking your lane, question mark the river, right? So like question mark here, question mark here, question mark here. Like lead your question marks towards mid lane. Just make 3 pings, and that way they know, oh, okay, the support is going towards mid lane, and ping who it is. So if it's a Blitzcrank, ping Blitzcrank twice, and then ping the river 3 different times, working your way towards mid so they understand this is where the Blitzcrank is probably pathing so that they're going to be there. Okay? So just let them know. Or just let them know also that you're coming. So if a mid lane is breaking out into a fight and you were just over here trying to get some vision, right? Maybe you just dropped a ward like here and here and you're in the area. Maybe, their jungler just showed up here and there's a fight breaking out. Just ping that you're on the way, right? So just let them know, I'm coming, I'm on the way. Just make those same pings that I'm coming in hot. And then that way they'll know that they can keep fighting because you're going to be there to back them up near the end of the fight, right? Because they may not see that, especially people who are in really intense fights. They may not notice that you're on your way, that you're rotating to help them. And so they might start running away, or they might just interact in a different way in the fight. They might use their cooldowns differently. They might position differently than they would if they knew you were coming. So just make sure that you're communicating that information as much as possible, both when you're rotating and when the enemy could be rotating. Okay, so information management, huge deal, and typically the support is in the best position to do that because you don't have to last hit, right? So you can spend a lot more of your mental energy interpreting the tab key and shot calling, making really good macro decisions than like the AD carry or the mid laner, because they're going to be razor focused on, trying to hit that CS safely and trying to position really well in the lane. So keep that in mind. Okay, so the last thing that I'll mention here is time management. And that is a resource. This is tempo. This is something that people don't think about a lot, but it kind of makes sense intuitively. If you're late to a fight, if the enemy team gets there 5 seconds earlier, they're probably going to win the fight because you were late. You didn't get priority, or you didn't realize you needed to rotate fast enough, right? Or the team that gets to the Baron and sets up the vision first is going to be at an extreme advantage over somebody who's 5 seconds late trying to get there to ward the Baron. So making sure that you're at the right place at a faster time than the enemy team can determine games all by itself. So that tempo is really, really important. And so learning how you can take advantage of these different timings and moments of power that you have that the enemy might not have. So a very simple example of this is cooldowns in the laning phase. This is the easiest way to manage time. If you have any sort of advantage in cooldowns, you need to be looking to exploit that advantage. So if your team invaded level 1 and forced the enemy AD carry to flash, you need to be using that flash. Like, don't let them sit there for free for 5 minutes and not use their flash. Right? If you see an opportunity, if you're going to pop level 2 and you're playing something like Rakan, you have Rakan Draven on your team and they're playing something like, Kaisa Thresh or whatever. If you pop level 2 and you see a good opportunity, you need to flash immediately and W and try to go all in on that AD carry because they don't have flash, right? And so the Draven can come in after them, and if Draven needs to, Draven can flash in there too and get that kill. So just really leverage that. Like, not only ping the timer that they don't have flash, but actually use it for something within that 5-minute window. Try to get that kill, try to get that tempo. Okay? So make sure you're doing that. Also look for their key cooldowns. If Blitz misses that hook, make him pay for it. He can't do anything for the next 18 seconds, right? Early on. So do something with that. Try to engage on him. Try to make a play. If Zyra misses her roots, if Lux misses her bind, Morgana misses her bind, try to do something. I see so often in coaching sessions where the enemy support or AD carry will use a clutch cooldown, and then they'll miss, and whoever I'm coaching will just sit there and like not do anything about it, right? So make sure you're punishing them. If they miss a cooldown, they need to pay the price, right? You need to go up and try to get something out of them. Hard engage, get some free poke, zone them off of the wave. Whatever you need to do it to get an advantage. So make sure that you're taking full advantage of those cooldowns if they miss stuff, if they're missing summoners, all those kinds of things. Okay, so that's number one. That's the easiest way to manage your time, is when you have a window of vulnerability on the enemy, you need to take advantage of that. Okay, try to get wave priority as much as possible. I talked about this in the recent 80 carry video, so I'm not going to rehash this too much, but the number one default position you should be doing if you're blue side or red side or whichever side is push them into the tower and then try to get an advantage by rotating over into the river. I think this is the best thing that you can be doing. Now, trying to get tower plates is okay, but really they nerf the tower plates. They're not worth as much, and you're putting yourself at risk by doing that. The support could hit an important cooldown on you and try to force a fight under the tower, and the jungler could also rotate on you as well if you don't know where the jungler is. You know, the enemy jungler could come down here and get behind you or jump over the wall or something like that and get an advantage on you if you try to stay in the lane and potentially try to force some kills, right? So if you're up here harassing under tower, you're not really getting that much of an advantage by doing that, and you're also making yourself vulnerable to the enemy jungler or the enemy support. So the smarter thing to do then is to rotate over into the river. Once you get that tempo advantage, once they're pushed under tower with the minions, they're going to have to sit here and clear this out, right, for 5 or 10 seconds. Or if they choose to rotate to match you. So if you're coming over here, let's say that your jungler is over here and you guys are trying to force a dragon because you got this tempo advantage. If they want to come over here and try to contest you, they're going to be losing all of that experience and all of that gold at the tower. So they're already losing anyways. You have the positional advantage because you're already here, and presumably you're going to have that warded because you're trying to take an objective. So you're already going to be in a position of power, and they're losing resources to do it. Versus, so now they have a choice. Either they can come over and try to fight you in an unfavorable position and sacrifice a lot of golden experience at the tower, or they can let you go and you get the free dragon, right? Versus if you were just standing over here, what is going on? So if you were just standing over here, for example, sitting at the tower, and your jungler is just like, you know, sitting here getting scuttle, and you don't do anything, then you lost the opportunity to get the dragon. Okay, so just trying to push them in, get that tempo, get that advantage. Another thing you can do if you go over here is you can get the scuttle yourself. If your jungler's not getting it, and in a lot of elos, people ignore the scuttle a lot when they're under diamond. I had someone debating me the other night on stream for like 30 minutes about why the scuttle really didn't matter that much in the bot lane when we were talking about just this. What should you be using with your timer, with your resources? A lot of people just won't get the scuttle. You can get it. It's really powerful. It's going to give your AD carry a refill on their mana, a refill on their HP, and usually it gives them about 3/4 of a wave worth of experience. So it's going to be giving them 4 or 5 extra minions worth of golden experience by getting that scuttle. It also gives you a free ward early on in the game, which is huge because you're typically not going to be able to get your upgraded ward item until, you know, maybe 9 or 10 minutes into the game. So having that extra free ward is going to give you even more information to help you make even better decisions. So try to rotate over here when you get that advantage. See if you can get the scuttle. If dragon's available and your jungler's on the bot side, especially if you know the enemy jungler's on the top side, see if you can get those dragons. But even just getting the vision, right? Just getting some vision here, that can watch both of these camps at the same time. That ward can. And then maybe getting like a vision ward over here can be huge. If you think the mid laner might roam on you, you could even put a defensive ward there. So just rotating, getting vision, getting scuttle, getting tempo. Also, if you're right here, you can shut out the enemy visions. You can do something like pink this bush, shut that out if you want to, or come over here and sweep this area, get rid of those wards. That's going to put additional pressure on the mid laner because they're not going to have any wards anymore. And they're not going to know where you are. They're not going to know where the jungler is. They're going to have to play defensively. Or if they choose not to do that, if you get this tempo, like maybe their mid laner is bullying your mid laner here, you can actually rotate up here with your AD carry and gank and kill that mid laner. So Doing this just gives you so many more resources, so many more options if you just get that time management advantage. If you just put them into the tower and then you rotate over here, then you're going to be able to do any of these 4 options, maybe even all of them. Maybe you get dragon plus get down vision plus rotate middle off of that. And what their natural instinct is going to be typically is to hard push whenever you do that as well. They see you rotate middle, you hard push. Well, guess what you can do then? You can rotate around behind them because now they're overextended. And now that your mid laner's free because you just killed their mid laner, then your mid laner can also rotate down there. And now you can make another play in the bot lane, get a couple of kills there, and then after you do that, then maybe you can rotate over here and get some tower plates or maybe even take the whole tower. So all of this can start snowballing really, really hard if you get that time management position. If you get the step on them on that rotation, you lock out the vision, and you threaten mid lane or you threaten the enemy jungler, you can get huge advantages off of that. So try to get that wave priority, try to push them in a tower, get that advantage. I talked about this in a previous video too. Some challengers will tell you don't do that, don't overextend, because the enemy might be able to set up a freeze here, and then the jungler is going to come down and camp you and all this other stuff that's really advanced. That's not going to happen most of the time if you're not in challenger. And so that's why sometimes you'll hear challengers critique the, just push, mindlessly push and rotate. But it works a lot, and it's very, very strong under Diamond. It does even work in Pro if done correctly, but it gets a little bit more advanced in like Challenger and Pro games. Try to force preferable backs for your team. So if you know that your ADC has a BF sword, you know that they're probably going to have about that much gold, and you know that the enemy is just going to have a tier. It's an Ezreal, he wants to buy a tier. Ping your ADC back and just go ahead and back and get them to get that BF sword. Even if they don't think of it on their own, they might back because you're backing, and you could get a preferable advantage. So that's a little bit more advanced. You have to understand, how much gold the AD carry is going to have. What you can do is ping your gold, and then the ADC might understand and ping their gold. And then if they have 1,300, then you could go ahead and force that back. So try to get some preferable backs. Don't overstay. I see this a lot where people try to just get one extra minion wave, and because of that, you can lose a lot of stuff. This happens even in, Diamond games, where you get an advantage, maybe you get a kill early on, and all of a sudden, you decide to overstay. Usually you can get one wave. After you get the kill, you can clean the current wave and get one more wave, and then you have to back. After that, they're going to be back there. So if you overstay, if you try to get 2 waves, you might be able to do it, but then what's going to happen is, or what could happen potentially, is that they're at a minimum going to be able to push you into your tower so that you're going to be losing minions, and then they're going to have the tempo advantage, right? And then they're going to be able to rotate middle, lock out all of your vision, maybe kill your mid laner, maybe take dragon if their jungler's there in the area. Oh, wrong buttons there. If their jungler's in the area, they can rotate over, take the dragon, lock out all of your vision, and then go rotate on mid lane with the support or the support and the AD carry while you're going to be pinned under tower. So it's not worth giving up that tempo, giving up that time advantage, even though you got a little bit more gold, because you lost the gold on the back half, and you're pushed in, and they get all of those advantages that we talked about before. So you really, really do not want to give them that tempo advantage if you can at all help it. And yeah, like I said, just exploit the enemy jungler's position. If they're top lane and your jungler's bot, see if you can force a dragon, right? You can go really aggressive if you have the advantage, if you know the jungler's on the top side of the map. Or if they're on the bot side, you might have to be more defensive. If your jungler ganks top and they see this and they take advantage and push you into tower, they're probably going to be able to get the dragon. And you just got to let that go, because there's not anything you can do about it because your jungler's on the top side of the map. So don't try to come over here and be a hero with your AD carry and 2v3 most of the time, unless you're just like insanely far ahead. You just got to let it go. And that sucks, but it'd be much worse to give them 2 extra free kills and give them even more tempo to go ward up your jungler or go get your bot lane plates if you try to go do that. So just, play around your time management as much as possible. Recognize if the enemy has tempo advantage, and don't try to overextend. And then be decisive with your shot calling. Just make that call. You see the jungler top lane, ping that dragon immediately, get your jungler over there, push the lane up, and go get an advantage. Okay, So the last couple of things that I'll mention here, what makes a strong support, and I want to try to end this as fast as possible. Let's see if we can get it under 60 minutes. You want efficient itemization that we mentioned before. So you want champions that can get things like Ardent Sensor, Redemption, really efficient items whenever possible. You want to have a flexible play style, so you want to play well when you're ahead or you're behind. You want to be able to use information well and really be efficient with your gold. So ideally, if a champion that doesn't have to have really expensive items is also going to be really strong as a support because they're going to be more efficient with their gold. You want to have really good mobility, so anyone that has flashes or dashes or can get Moby Boots or has other things that speed them up are naturally going to make you better for rotations, better for warding. You want to have good wave clear as much as possible because that's going to allow you to get priority in the lane. Push up so that you can get some of these advantages. So you're obviously not going to be killing the minions yourself a lot of the time with the wave clear, but you can set it up for your allies to kill the minions potentially. So people like Nautilus, who has his E, Zyra with her Q and her E, even someone like Soraka is going to have like okay wave management if you put 2 or 3 points in your Q, because you can just Q that back line and allow people to push up a little bit more. Janna can charge her tornado if it's safe and just put the tornado through the minions to push. So just try to pick something that has decent wave clear as much as possible so that you can get priority. And then having high scaling and high team utility is really useful because that's going to just ensure that you're good as the game goes on. Even if your team's a little bit behind, you're going to have lots of contributions that you can make to team fights. That can come in the form of scaling, buying things like Ardent Sensor and Redemption. That can also come in the form of like really heavy CC for team fights, things like Nautilus and his ultimate that can CC multiple people and force really strong fights. So that's going to be it. Hopefully this helps you out a little bit. Think about some of these different management systems, what it really means to carry a support. And all it is just managing these systems, just making the most out of the gold that your team has, trying to get that information with wards and making the best plays that you can based on that information. And then also being able to manage time, which is typically just getting priority in a lane and going and doing something effective, as well as playing around enemy cooldowns and playing around your team's cooldowns as well, so that you put yourself in the best position to make good plays. Anyways, that's going to be it. That's how you actually carry in League of Legends. Hopefully this will help you out. You can definitely carry and win as support. There are a lot of people out there that say you can't climb as support, you can't make it, no one hard carries as support. It's like, well, this is how you do it. And I'll guarantee you, like, I made it to Diamond 3 just playing support the entire time, and there are a lot of people out there that make it to Diamond, Masters, even Challenger, only playing support by mastering a lot of these skills. So it takes a little bit more critical thinking, a little bit more than just looking at damage charts and just reading KDAs and things like that, but it can be done if you're practicing the right things and making the right kinds of plays. Anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did. Check out the rest of the content on the channel, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.